Mister, how do you operate this Twitter thing or this Instagram thing or whatever the heck? You're supposed to know all this stuff. Anyway, welcome back to the show.
You know, it's Thursday, and we talk our fantasy football on Thursday with this man. Little Senra says, ding, and Kyle is back. And he will be with us every Thursday, breaking down all things fantasy football. A very dear friend of mine, a brother, and I love having him on. Kyle, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Snowman, glad to be here. Glad we can make this work.
All right, let's get to it. Let's get to work. And quarterbacks is the position of the week. He sent me his list, which I can create the graphics for it. But there's one obvious name missing, and I say that very, very playfully, and I know he'll tell us why that name is missing. Let's get to the 10 that are on this list, and we start at number 10, and we go with the San Diego Chargers with Justin Herbert.
Well, to be fair, I know exactly which name you're thinking about. He's at 11, so literally just missed the cut. If you went to top 12, he'd be on here to be talking about it. But
right.
But yeah, I think Herbert's got we've seen him finish as a top 3 quarterback before, that true upside. Now, the reason he is, I would say, so low in the rankings is because he's lost his top 2 receivers from last year, really top 3 if you count Austin Eckler. But Mike Williams gone, Keenan Allen gone. They've essentially drafted Ladd McConkey and signed DJ Chark to replace what they had last year, but then the 2 incumbents as well, Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer. So they've kind of got this group to make up, because all the running backs they brought in, none of them really profile as pass-catching running backs, or certainly have shown to be that in the NFL. So it's a group of tight ends as well. But Herbert's ability and rushing ability, passing ability, and I think Jim Harbaugh's a good enough coach that he'll get enough out of Herbert that he'll still finish top 10, even though that would be a bit of a disappointment based on what we've seen in recent years from Herbert.
To number 9 we go, and my wife would be proud of this one. We go to the capital city of Indiana, and we find the exciting Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, this is projection of through 4 games from last year, but based on what he did last year, he would finish quite outstanding. I do touchdown projections for all players, and I currently have him projected tied with Jalen Hurts for the most rushing touchdowns among quarterbacks. Now, he's one of the lowest in terms of passing touchdowns. I think I only projected him for 16 passing touchdowns. That would 30th or 31st among starters. So it's low, but the upside is there with the rushing. But it's health obviously concerned. Part of the story last year was, of those 4 games, I think he only actually finished one of them, like start to finish. The other 3 he got injured. So there's definitely concerns there, but there's also enough upside that, again, like struggling with guys like Purdy and Herbert, that I view as safe. I'll take the risk on Richardson, I think, at this point. Rank him lower.
At number 8, we go to Houston and the AFC South surprise winner, CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans.
And actually, as a Packers fan, you could argue, just like Purdy, Jordan Love probably should maybe be in this top 10 as well. And I think the reason
absolutely
I'd be banking against both is the really high touchdown rates. Now, Purdy's done it 2 years in a row. So statistically, eventually that it will drop, but he's also shown he's clearly, because he's done this 2 years in a row, he can be above 5. I mean, year 1, I think he was at 9% touchdown rate. It was absurd. Even dropping last year, still a lot higher than most of the group. And it's to wonder, okay, does he drop again to kind of get to the average of what we've seen from NFL quarterbacks, or is he truly that outlier outstanding? I don't know. But one thing that looked great last year was CJ Stroud, and his touchdown rate was only, I think, like 4.3%, 4.5%. So nothing outstanding. He could easily make that second-year jump. And in spite of that, say, average touchdown rate, he still finished as a top 12 quarterback last year. They've added weapons in Stephon Diggs, and I think this offense is ready now that they have the confidence to know, okay, we not only performed well, but won games last year, won a playoff game even. Now I think they have the confidence to just hit it full stride. You get the sense the Texans really do feel like they want to maximize the rookie QB contract window, and they have to win with Stroud on a rookie contract, because eventually he's going to get paid big. Even these quarterbacks are getting paid now. So I think they're going to be pedal to the metal, and we could see Stroud really improve. It's just the reason, I guess, again, he'd be so low relative to like maybe where he's being drafted at. was just in a salary cap contract league where he had the most money and was spent on Stroud. He had the largest 4-year contract. Only Josh Allen had a higher average among quarterbacks, but it was on a 3-year deal. But so people are drafting Stroud almost to be that QB1. I'm a little hesitant because I think he can take a step up, but still be behind the top tier, which is why he's ranked where he is in my rankings.
To number 7, we go to the desert and we find Kyler Murray coming off of an injury and ready to start a full season.
And that's the beauty, I think, is last year we saw is weird because we wonder, okay, is he not going to run very much? And that could lead to really, if he has really good touchdown weeks, he'll still have a high ceiling. You know, he could still put up a 30-point week if he throws 4 or 5 touchdowns. If he doesn't and he's not running, like the floor could be really low, but actually the opposite happened. He didn't really have spike week, ceiling weeks, but he was super consistent, scored like I think at least 15 points in every game he played. So to show, okay, he's got that, at least that safe floor that you know. We've also seen in the past, that especially the rushing touchdown upside, he could truly have that elite ceiling top 3, kind of like Herbert. But unlike Herbert, I really like what they've done there, and they've improved. I mean, losing Marquise Brown is no small feat. Like that's a great receiver, and that's going to hurt, I think. But what mitigates that is drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., a young prospect who looks NFL ready and looks like he and Kyler, and then also the tight end Trey McBride, that trio together can help the Cardinals make the next step. So I expect a bounce back year from Kyler. And unlike last season, I think we will see more spike weeks. So to me, he kind of feels like Anthony Richardson, but we've seen a lot more from him. So I'm willing to trust him a little more, which is why he's up there.
Yeah. And Trey McBride is no small tight end, folks. He can catch and he can run. Saw it personally twice when I did the 49ers Cardinals games this past year. And these two teams, when the Niners and Cardinals hook up, do not be surprised if it's another 45-31 kind of game like we saw in week 15 last year. At 6, we go to Texas and we find the one and only Dak Prescott from the Dallas Cowboys.
So he led the NFL in passing touchdowns last year, and it's not the first time he's had elevated seasons. He's had several top 3 seasons in his career. I don't think he's ever finished as the QB1 overall, which is why again he's a little bit outside what I would call the top 2 tiers, or maybe he's in the towards the back end of the second tier. But he's shown consistent production and especially a great connection with CeeDee Lamb. Not much has changed for this offense. Bringing Zeke back. Maybe they run a little bit more, but it does seem like another year where they're just going to sling it. A ton of pass attempts, a ton of volume for Dak, and especially a lot of targets going towards CeeDee Lamb will really elevate both. Does he lead the league in passing touchdowns? I don't think that will necessarily happen, just because I think there's some other quarterbacks that might step up and hit closer to 40 than he did. But still willing to take him over some of the other guys, like even Stroud, who we're hoping takes that next step forward to become what Dak is. Well, I think I'll just bank on what Dak has been for one more season.
All right, we're into our top 5. And speaking of coming back from injury, we expect this guy to come back from injury slinging it. This is Joe Burrow from the Cincinnati Bengals.
Based on some of the drafts that I've been part of and seen already, this seems like he's the guy that's really falling, where he's going behind most of the people I just talked about. Certainly behind Stroud, Dak as well, Richardson. He's going in a range where Kyler, Herbert, Burrow, all 3 of them might end up being really good values. But to me, Herbert stands out the most. Losing Tyler Boyd might suck, but I also do like what they did bringing in the rookie Jermaine Burton. So maybe that's a slight loss, but maybe towards the end of the season, it actually gets closer to neutral. Bringing an athletic tight end like Mike Gesicki could be the thing that they've missed. I think it's a tight end piece that they've tried to. We saw Burrow target Tanner Hudson a lot last year.
Yeah.
Gesicki's a much different level athlete. And while I liked what Hudson did, he was actually usable for fantasy. He was a good safe floor, getting constant targets and receptions every week. But I think Gesicki can really help attain that ceiling. And of course, the connection between Jamar Chase and Burrow is great. Technically, T. Higgins is in another contract year, so maybe that's another really productive season from Higgins. I could see Burrow basically doing what Dak did last year. Another 35, 36 touchdown season. I think that's totally in the range for Joe Burrow.
I see that also. Speaking of seeing it, and speaking of a quarterback that can be very, very dynamic, we go to the reigning MVP, number 4, Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens.
So this could be either viewed as the start of the top tier. I actually tend to view Lamar almost as in a tier of his own, where I think the top 3 have incredible weekly ceiling for a variety of different reasons, but they also have safe floors with them. Now, it's funny because Lamar, considering who Lamar is and what we typically talk about floor and ceiling in fantasy football, Lamar would be the perfect example of a floor quarterback where, he's the guy that's going to rush for 1,000 yards every year. In theory, we know he can do that. Those rushing yards, that consistent ground production, that's where quarterbacks get their floor, but it's through touchdowns that you get ceiling. Now, Lamar has actually been really great at throwing touchdowns. His touchdown rate is one of the best in the NFL. Now, his pass attempts are low, but that still means he can reach a 30, even 35 touchdown season. Like that's in his range of outcomes. Yeah, so that definitely helps with his ceiling. But what we saw last year is actually the floor almost disappear. There were games where they could afford to not have him run. And I think it's smart on them and smart on Lamar. He'll run when the game's on the line or when it's a big game that he needs to kind of make the plays happen. But through a regular season where they feel comfortable if they can make the playoffs, they probably aren't going to ask him to run a lot, especially now that Derrick Henry's there. So I can see matchups where, the running for Lamar is really working and we think we can do it safely and protect him. But there might be other matchups where they just say hand it off every time. Either that's being so effective that Lamar doesn't need to run, or the passing so effective that he doesn't need to run. So what we've now seen with Lamar in the last couple seasons, his floor is actually super low, but he still has the weekly ceiling to keep up with and be the QB1 on any given week. But I just don't think his floor week to week, what he gives you as the baseline, as the low end, is as high as the top three. So that's why I consider him at 4 and in kind of a tier of his own at number 2, because everyone below him, it's tough to match his upside. Again, maybe Anthony Richardson eventually, but I also think he needs to develop as a passer because Lamar, and again, a couple other guys. There's one guy in particular that kind of think a lot of people compare to Richardson. He could be that. But we've seen these passers do that and do it really effectively.
At number 3, we go to Rich Stadium in Orchard Park, New York, and we find the leader of the Bills in Josh Allen.
Typically, what I've seen in a lot of drafts is he's been the most popular pick for the first quarterback to go. And I think there's a big reason for that. I think we're on, it's either 5 or 6 years in a row where he's either finished as the QB1 or QB2 overall each year. And it's just, he does it in a variety of ways. He's a really high upside weekly quarterback. Like you're never surprised if he finishes as the QB1 on any given week. And especially last year, the ton of rushing touchdowns. And that's actually something I think could continue for him because he's lost some of his weapons. Stephon Diggs gone.
Yep.
Abe Davis, we could talk about him being so boom bust and like giving fantasy managers zeros for several weeks in a row, but still a great target as a real NFL player. And this offense is going to change. And maybe Dalton Kincaid is ready to take that next step and be that like Travis Kelce centerpiece of an offense, and it'll still operate well. But there is some concern with that. And I think the 2 quarterbacks I have ranked ahead, they've either done neutral for their passing offense or even improved, I would argue. In some cases where I think their teams are better, whereas it feels like Josh Allen's surrounding talent got worse. So that's why I'm willing to kind of take the risk on dropping him to number 3, which would be unprecedented on this 5-year run. Like him finish outside the top 2, no way. I'll bank on that and try and actually invest heavier into these top 2 quarterbacks.
And here's number 2 right now. Let's go to the city of brotherly love, and we're waiting this guy to have a bounce back season, the one and only Jalen Hurts from the Philadelphia Eagles.
I think he has been a good value, especially in dynasty leagues. Now in redraft, it seems like he's still going as a top 3 quarterback, but I've seen some dynasty mock drafts or just value charts where Stroud's passing to him, and Stroud's a top 3 quarterback, and Hurts is falling to QB 4 or 5 in dynasty. And so I've been telling listeners of the Full Press Fantasy Pod all off season in dynasty, go buy Hurts. I've managed to actually trade for him in a couple leagues this year, so got my exposure to Hurts up, which is great because I think bounce back season. Now the one area he doesn't need to bounce back on is the rushing touchdowns. And that's where he can equal Josh Allen in terms of the weekly ceiling. We've seen weeks where he gets 3 rushing touchdowns and just smashing. Like if you had him on your team, you're most likely winning that week because it's so much higher than the next QB even that it's making a massive difference. And so the brotherly shove, right? The tush push, whatever it's called.
Yep.
There's been a lot of talk that might not continue, which I don't know. I see how successful it was, like 90% rate. Like what play in the NFL is guaranteed that much? It really doesn't exist. So from a real football standpoint, they don't really have much incentive to not do it. And it's not like Hurts ever really takes massive hits on these plays. Typically, the plays we're worried about with quarterbacks running is when they're scrambling, there's not O linemen in front of them to protect, and they're kind of taking off, and someone hits them on the blind side, or just someone comes in like, from a lot of space away, gets a lot of momentum, and then makes a solid hit. On these short yardage plays, the defenders rarely have enough time to gain enough speed to really punish these quarterbacks. So I don't think it's the Eagles really think they're putting Hurts in that much danger. They probably think it's more danger him standing in the pocket, potentially taking a sack. That's probably more of a concern. And the other talk is, okay, Jason Kelce retiring. So let me get your thoughts on this, because I know, you're a really smart football guy. What were Jason Kelce's best traits as a center?
His mind.
Recognizing, the protection. Yeah, calling the protections.
Calling the protection, recognizing the blitz, recognizing different coverages, and just him being able to get the ball to Jalen Hurts, especially when they worked out of the shotgun, and just the way he makes adjustments from play to play and from game to game. I mean, Jason Kelce is a throwback center. And there was a center by the name of Randy Cross who was the same way for San Francisco for many years. And of course, Jesse Sapolo took his position. Kelce reminds me of Jay Hilgenberg when he was with the Chicago Bears for 10 years. Mike Webster, the old center from the Pittsburgh Steelers, is the same way as Jason Kelce. Kent Hull from the Buffalo Bills. These are all old school centers that recognize everything and became the captain of their offensive line for a reason. They recognize the blitzes, they recognize the defenses, and were able to make their adjustments very quickly. So the quarterback knew if he had to make an adjustment or if he can let the play roll, because we'll hear the quarterback say, let it roll, let it roll, let it roll after he hears the center, but then he'll say alert, or he'll say check or something, and check into something else. It was Kelce's mind that really did it for me, because like I said, he reminded me of so many old school centers, some of which I've named: Mark Sipnowski from the Cowboys, or Derek Kennard from the Cowboys. Mentioned Mike Webster from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just those guys. Frank Winters from the Packers from the 90s when he had a gunslinger Brett Favre. I already mentioned Justice Apollo when he had not only Montana
defense. Yeah, you need the center doing that.
He had to. I mentioned Jesse Sapolo, who was all-pro at 3 different positions for that San Francisco offensive line over the course of 12 years. He centered not one but 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Steve Young and Joe Montana. So to make that adjustment alone, to go from a righty to a lefty, to go from which side, who's picking up the blitz, which side is coming faster with the blitz? Are they going to sneak somebody up? Is Kelce himself going to have to pick up a blitzer? If the running back can't get to it, if the running back goes out into the pattern. We saw that a lot with DeAndre Swift when he was with the Eagles.
Probably going to see that a lot with Barkley too. That's one of his.
You're going to see, we're going to see that a lot with Barkley. You see that a lot with Christian McCaffrey. You see that. You see that we're going to see that a lot with James Cook in Buffalo. When running backs have to pick up blitzer, when running backs go out into the pattern, it's the center's duty to pick up the blitzer. So that is what impressed me the most about Jason Kelce's run. Speaking of a run, this guy is on a run, and it's probably going to be permanent. The king himself, Patrick Mahomes, tops out our list.
Yeah, to me, it's a big debate between Hurts and Mahomes. Like Hurts with the rushing touchdown ceiling, because I still think that tush push is there, because whatever center they bring in, I think he can do the 1-yard plunge properly. It's maybe some of the nuances of the passing game, or maybe like the ability for like Barkley to have long runs. That's where you might see an effect of not having Kelce. So I think Hurts has the rushing touchdown upside, but there's no quarterback in the league that has more passing touchdown upside than Mahomes. And he's had a couple of down seasons, but guess what? They've strongly invested in this receiving core again. Drafting Xavier Worthy in the first round, and I was claiming him as the third receiver. I liked him more than Odunze, which is pretty big hot take, but certainly sticking to that because I love the landing spot fantasy wise.
Look, I love Xavier Worthy. Okay, I'll take him over Odunze any day because Xavier Worthy proved himself at Texas. Okay, we didn't know about Odunze.
Exactly. He an 18-year-old when he was like really strongly producing?
He was 18. We didn't know about Odunze until the college football playoff. We knew about Xavier Worthy for 3 years. Experience gives, for me, Experience gives Xavier Worthy a huge advantage. Not to mention you got Patrick Mahomes throwing to you on the dead run.
A quarterback with experience as opposed to a rookie quarterback too. But
exactly,
you talk about experience. Marquise Brown's experience in the NFL has basically just been getting open and drawing targets wherever he goes. I think there's a chance he actually leads this team in targets this year over Kelsey. We've seen him been able to usurp an elite tight end before, and that both players still eat. But I think at least one of the seasons they were together, he got more targets than Mark Andrews. So, and even if he doesn't do that with Kelsey, I think they'll both gain enough targets. And what Mahomes now has just got, and especially with Brown, is downfield threats.
Right.
No longer is Marquez Valdez-Scantling your designated deep threat, or Justin Watson. Like now it's you've got guys that, especially Marquise Brown, that he's ready for the role. He's had that role his whole career, so we know he can win that way. I think Mahomes is especially going to like Brown. It's a contract year for Brown too, a lot to prove. So in my touchdown projections, I have Hurts for 24 passing and 11 rushing. Now with 4 point per passing touchdown scoring, that would be 162 points just on touchdowns. Mahomes, I've got him up at 39 passing, but only 2 rushing. But with enough, like 15 extra passing touchdowns, it's 168 points. And then it comes down to, okay, who's throwing for more yards? Certainly Hurts will probably rush for more yards. Like he's a 1,000-yard rusher like Lamar is. They do definitely win in different ways. And all that together, I think earlier in the offseason, I was Hurts at number 1 because of the rushing touchdown upside. But as I've projected more and more, and just especially the ability of Marquise Brown, when he adds to this team, I'm now confident going with Mahomes as the quarterback one. I've already taken him in a couple of redraft leagues this year. So that's trade for Hurts in Dynasty, but still take Mahomes in redraft. Those are the 2 things I would say to do right now.
We're getting you ready for a new season of fantasy football, and this man is along for the ride with us for the entire season. My good friend Kyle Senra, the man in charge of the Full Press Fantasy Podcast, Full Press Packers Podcast, and a very dear friend that's going to get us and get you ready for fantasy football here on Snowman in the Morning and with Snowman Multimedia. Thank you very much, my friend. I love you. We'll do it again next week with the position of your choice. We'll play a little dealer's choice next week. And we'll have you pick the position and give us your top 10. So get ready, folks. Whenever I get this man dealer's choice, it's always a fun list. It's a fun list anyway. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Snowman.
Yep, we're going to play a little dealer's choice next week and have him pick the position and with his top 10. It's going to be a lot of fun. Have a great day. God bless. Remember to make your next move your best move. And always remember, if your dreams don't scare you, then they're just simply not big enough. Dream big, do bigger. We are, and we hope y'all are too. Next month is the return and a full season of That 49ers Show. Watch for the promos. So long, everybody.